Hey everyone, Nate Zeisler here, and I am joined today by Jazmín Morales. Welcome, Jazmín. And I
Thanks
thought
for
it would
having
be
me.
great. We just launched the national version of the Fortissima program, which is the brainchild of Jazmín Morales. And I thought it would be a good idea to have Jazmín come on and talk just a little bit about the the program's inception and the trajectory from the idea to where we are at this moment in time. So thanks for joining, Jazmín. And I'd love to just start by asking you where this idea came from and and how you thought of the program.
Absolutely. So, Fortissima, for those who don't know, is an artistic and leadership development program for young women of color in classical music, specifically high school age, pre-college age, young women from underrepresented minorities in classical music who demonstrate excellence on an orchestral instrument and have an interest or curiosity about pursuing a career in music. And this program was really born of my experience as a woman of color in classical music. I was trained as a violinist. I started Suzuki Method when I was 3 years old. But I also grew up around many classically trained mariachis. My dad actually immigrated to the U.S. on a classical guitar scholarship to ASU. And while he was there, he was recruited by a mariachi, Sol de Mexico, out here in LA. And so he learned to play mariachi when he got to the States. And that's when I came into the picture. And Mariachi Sol de Mexico to this day has some of the most highly trained and virtuosic musicians in Mexico and the Southwest. And so it was normal life to me to be around people who played classical music and mariachi. And so when I began sort of playing in more ensembles and orchestras later on in my training, I began to notice patterns in the people who I was making music with, and I, frequently found myself the only person of color, the only woman of color in many of the orchestral settings and chamber music settings that I was participating in, and that it felt a little isolating.
Mhm.
Especially, later in my high school years, I was the concertmaster of a regional youth orchestra, and I was the only woman of color in that context, and I was also the concertmaster. And so it was just it was a very interesting challenge to deal with as a 16, 17-year-old. And meanwhile, I'm also playing in a professional all-female mariachi where I'm surrounded by women of color who are also really gifted musicians, and it filled me with a sense of empowerment and excitement that I didn't really have in the classical world. And so um, fast forward many years later, when I'm in graduate school thinking about issues that I want to address as an arts administrator, this is certainly something um, that came to mind for me, because I think had the conditions been a little different, or had I had a different set of role models to guide me through, I may have chosen a career in classical performance. And I think many young women face a lot of the same barriers
Mhm.
that I did back then. And so I was curious to figure out a way to inspire, equip, and empower more Black and Brown girls to consider careers and training and futures in classical music and the performing arts, to help shift the landscape, as you
Sure.
know, which is still very white, especially in classical music. So thus was born the idea of Fortissima. It was actually my thesis project in graduate school, and Nate
Yeah.
knows this because he actually came to my thesis defense, and immediately after I presented it, he's like, "We got to do this at Colburn." And I may or may not have created the program with Colburn in mind, just
Yeah.
knowing, uh, you know,
The
that
stars
that was
aligned. Yeah.
the stars aligned perfectly, exactly. And so, yeah, thank you, Nate, for all the support that you've shown this program since before it was even a real thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was a no-brainer for me. And the I had the great fortune of having you join at the perfect time, right? Just months before your final defense of your thesis. And just amazing to see this, literally the stars align with the programmatic intent meshing with some of the programmatic initiatives that we were trying to create at Colburn. So it's that moment, call it a moment of serendipity, or just absolute something that was meant to be. It
Yeah.
it seemed like a perfect fit for what we were doing here. So okay, so you're at Colburn, and you've had your thesis, and you and I conspired to make this thing go. What happened next?
So next, I prepared to launch a pilot, and that was
Yeah.
a big, scary thing for me. Like, Fortissima is really the only thing that I can point to and say, like, oh, this is like my project or something that I have like conceived and brought into the world. And so it was scary to even think about, like, okay, now how do I make this real? And so
Yeah.
I did then what a version of what I'm doing now, which is I called all my friends and people I know and asked for help and recommendations and ideas. And so I, was lucky enough to have a lot of resources at Colburn, especially with UNATE and our old colleague Lizzie, who was doing a lot of leadership development and research. And
Mhm.
so allowing that to inform the curriculum that I was building. And I cold called a lot of people. One of those people was Chuck Dickerson, who is now he's the director of the Inner City Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles, and he's now a partner of Colburn. We're now partnering
Yeah.
with ICOLA. But back then he was like, "Who are you? What are you doing? Like, what is this program?" And I was like, "Can I come talk to your students? Like, I really want to meet them, and like, I have an opportunity that might be interesting for them." And he's like, "Yeah, sure, you can talk to them, but you got to sit in the orchestra for the rehearsal."
Oh my gosh.
And so I had to sight read some Mahler. I forget what they were playing, and I was just like, had not sit in an orchestra for like 10 years at that point, and so
Yeah.
I really had to earn it. um Only to say, like, I cold called some people
Yeah.
whose work I was following and admiring, and asked them for their time and their advice and their connections to help me identify a group of students for a pilot. And so through these conversations, I identified 6 young women who we brought on for a pilot of the program for 2 years, and designed a curriculum that was kind of a big experiment, but
Mhm.
has ultimately informed so many other areas of my practice, including activities that we now do with organizations, like From the Top, or directly implementing it into curriculum that I'm teaching in my Colburn classes. And so it's just been like a really fun and rewarding experience in getting a place to kind of play with curriculum that other programs may not have as much flexibility, or might not have the same specificity to provide to students. And so we did everything from mindfulness and yoga training to for performance anxiety, to strengths-based leadership chamber music
Oh
applications,
my gosh.
to critical listening sessions at our local classical radio station KUSC, to etiquette workshops to learn how, which is the right fork you need to use at that gala
Yeah.
that you're invited to, your post concert reception, and lots of other things in between that are not always, that are often expected of students but not frequently taught.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, and that program over the course of 2 years, the all 6 young women have graduated.
One is
Now
graduating this spring. Yeah.
one is, oh, we have, there's one more.
The
Okay,
youngest one. Yeah, the
the
youngest one. Yeah, her. She'll
and
she'll
the
be graduating this spring, and hopefully at Thornton.
fantastic, and the program has been, by all accounts, wildly successful, even in the beta phase. Talk a little bit about where the young women have gone after graduation.
Yeah, so our first graduates went off to UCLA and Oberlin. The next went to Stanford and Cal State Long Beach.
Hmm.
And now hopefully we'll have a couple at Thornton, at USC Thornton School of Music. So
That's fantastic.
yeah, and they're studying. Some are studying music. Others went into literature. One's in music theory. One's gonna go into political science, and so they all kind of ran the gamut, but are keeping music as part of their studies.
That's fantastic. And of course, I think we're uh, unified in the notion that a goal is professionalization in the arts. And of course, we use classical music as the um, kind of the medium for the training, but it's not the goal, right? It's one of many. And so we celebrate. I know I'm thrilled to hear the many different pursuits that our students go on to after they finish their training.
Totally.
Talk to me a little bit now about, so now we've um, we've just announced a national program. And what is the talk about the key differences for you between the local program and the national program?
Yeah, so I think we took a lot of learning away from the local pilot, and one of the big things for me was figuring out what the like what pathway exactly we were building into
Yeah.
Colburn, especially. It's like the program lived in Colburn under the auspices of our center. But I think during the pilot, it was still, we had some students in the community school, but it's like the end goal to get them to the music academy. Do we want them to apply to the conservatory? And so, being more intentional now with the national model as seeing it as a direct entry point into either the music academy or later into the conservatory. And thinking about the pool of applicants that we would want to work with,
Yeah.
and also just like the scope of the students that we'd be able to serve. And so that informed, I think, the shift to the national model. Colburn, we have obviously recruitment efforts happening at Colburn, but with the new shift towards focusing on equity, diversity, and inclusion, we're thinking a lot more broadly about how we're engaging students from throughout the nation, and a
Yeah.
lot of pre-college pipeline programs that are specializing in EDI. And being able to expand Fortissima nationally felt like a really great connection to get students onto campus to experience what conservatory life in LA really feels like. LA and San Francisco are the two independent conservatories out here, and we're not, we're so separate from everything else happening on the East Coast, where there's a high concentration of these programs. And so being able to get students out here is, I think, a really huge selling point.
Yeah.
In raising awareness that Colburn is, even in existence, that they can come and get a free college education if they're into it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that was a big thing for me, for sure.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so in the process, there's a natural connection to a lot of organizations that have actively been and successfully been building pipeline programs for several years now. So the hope here, I believe, is that we'll be connecting with those various organizations across the country
Yep,
as well, right?
correct.
Um, and from that point, so talk to me just a little bit about what the program will look like now. Now that we're moving it to a more national reach.
Yeah, so and especially that we're starting in still COVID times. I decided that I would experiment with this two-pronged approach, beginning with virtual learning and culminating in an in-person residential intensive. And so basically it's these two parts. Right now, we actually just opened applications 2 days ago. And so we'll close those in April and announce a cohort of up to 10 students in May. And one of the other big changes that I made for the national program is bringing in a group of mentors very early in the process,
Mm-hmm.
who will each work with 2 students over the summer, but are also helping me and our music director, Janina Norpoth, really shape what the program looks like, shaping the application, giving us advice and connections to the various programs that they're connected to. And so they're really a big part of this early stage of the program as well. And so once the cohort's announced in May, from May to October will be a 6-month period of virtual learning and mentorship. So they'll have 3 career development sessions with me and some guests, and meet monthly with their mentor. So one of the 5 distinguished mentors that we've brought on to help us with this. And then in October, from October 30th to November 6th, will be the in-person residential intensive on the Colburn campus, where students will get to experience conservatory life firsthand and take trial lessons with faculty, observe classes in the conservatory, and also get the that 2-year leadership curriculum that I worked on with the pilot condensed into a 1-week sort of day to night camp, like, very like, no sleep during the week type experience, where you're surrounded by a small group of like-minded musicians who also just share a lot with you and are doing this coming along on the journey with you and
Sure.
hoping to like forge those deep connections, not only among the cohort, but among the faculty who we bring in to work with them, and the now alumni that we have of the local pilot. So
Yeah.
building all that in as well.
It's amazing, amazing little community forming right before our eyes. It's really
Yeah.
fantastic. Um, well, that's great, and of course, we'll include the application information in the notes of this video, and if
Great.
anyone listening has somebody, if either they are interested or know somebody who might be interested, we'd love to have them submit an application, and those applications are open for the next month and a half or so. So get on that process. I think the other thing that you and I were talking about just before we came on this call was just and something that we hear a lot, and that's just the question of the environment that is necessary for a program like this to come forward. And I'm just curious about what comes to your mind when you think about what was necessary for Fortissima to 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 come and to grow on the Colburn campus.
Well, I definitely think um, the establishment of the community engagement office was the first big step for
Yeah,
Colburn to create an environment where programs like this could exist and thrive.
yeah,
And later, that further commitment to move that office into a center for innovation and community impact, where we sort of formalized our commitment um, to experimentation and to innovating programs that are making real impact in our community in the classical music world. And so I think that alone is such a fertile ground for programs like these to emerge. um, and the other thing I'll say is that working in an institution, right, in an academic institution specifically, progress can often feel just so slow and almost imperceptible. Like you can't always perceive it at every step that it moves forward.
yeah,
And other times it happens really quickly, and sometimes it's a matter of having the patience and the emotional resilience to wait for the right moment
yeah,
to take that opportunity and seize it and take it as far as you can. And that's certainly been a lesson learned over and over through our work, which is like there's always a time and place for a program. And we don't always know exactly when the stars align to make something happen, but when we see that sliver of an entry point, if you can slide in and take advantage of the climate, a lot of things can happen in small amount of time.
yeah, absolutely. That that notion of being patient, especially for me, I generally like to move quickly on things, and sometimes just having to wait and hold just a little bit to until that moment arrives to be able to attack something quickly. So congrats to you on getting this program to a place where we were able to move super quickly. I mean, really, in a matter of months, we were able to take this program from beta stage to a full-blown national program, which is
Yeah,
a large credit to you, Jazmín. And I'm super excited to see this in action in the coming months, and be a part of it, and let it. I'm also excited for it to be embedded in the fabric of the institution for many years to come, which is the truly exciting part of this work, to know that this is the start of something that will be here for a long period of time. So congrats.
absolutely. Thank you so much. I really couldn't have done it without you, and just the leadership that um, that you've supported this program with, and also just the school with. I think it's a different place than when you arrived a decade ago, and that's in large part due to your work. So congrats to you as well, Nate.
Well, thanks. And it's great to be in good company and part of a great team. And
Indeed.
here's to all of the work that's coming our way with this
Oh yeah.
program. But congrats and thank you for shedding just a little bit of information and background on the program. I'm super excited for the first cohort or the second cohort to be announced here in May. And if anybody has any follow-up questions, how can they reach you to ask questions about the Fortissima program?
So you can reach me at jmorales@colburnschool.edu, or I'm at Jazmín Natalia on Instagram. Or if you'd like more information on the program, you can visit colburnschool.edu/Fortissima.
Fantastic. And I'll include that all in the interview notes. And thanks so much for your time, Jazmín. Have a
Thanks,
great,
Nate.
thanks for listening, everybody. Have a good one.
Take care.